Today, I'm not talking about specs. Rather, I'm going to talk and focus on my experience using this device in multiple different situations and talking about things that really stood out to me and where it let me down. Let's talk about it. Now, the first thing I want to talk about are the hinges on this laptop because this is important, and there are two of them. There's the main one that's traditional one everybody knows about, but this one is loose. It's not actually fixed. Like, this is just gonna, it just taps around. What that means is that you only get 3 dedicated positions to be able to use this laptop. You have the laptop mode, which is normal. Then you have this mode called tent mode, which has magnets in the board itself so that it sticks and stays there. And then finally, of course, as everybody knows, you have the tablet mode, which is flat on the surface. Now, the reason that's important is because over the past 30 days, I've been using this in the regular laptop form for maybe 80% of the time. And the other 20%, I've primarily just been using it in this hybrid mode, like this. Now, there's no magnets here, so this does wobble. Now, the dedicated tent mode, which is this, it doesn't wobble, so it's pretty hard, but it's very uncomfortable to actually write or take notes like this because it is too steep. This is great for viewing in video, I'll get into that later, but you can't actually take notes while it's in this form. And when you go down to tablet mode, this is too high for my wrist. Now, I don't like to be on the tablet as I write, I like to be kind of off. Uncomfortable for my wrists to write like this, especially for longer periods of time. I'm talking an hour-long lecture, you're taking notes like this, your wrist is going to start feeling it. If you're comfortable writing on top of the tablet itself, you should be fine, and I think artists and most designers are okay with that. But for myself, taking notes on the whiteboard app, I just found it uncomfortable in this position just because it is very high. In tablet mode, this is not moving around. There's grips on the bottom on both sides that make it stay in place very, very well, but the other thing is that it's very heavy. It has weight to it, and that also adds to it not moving around, but it just makes it uncomfortable to use anywhere else than a tabletop. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to be using this on your lap. You're not going to be using this while holding it up in tablet mode. This is not something you can take to bed to watch videos or to read books. Not happening. Your biceps are going to be sore in the morning. The only way to use this in tablet mode realistically is to have it down on some sort of a table or surface and using it like this. Otherwise, this isn't something that can replace a tablet or a iPad. Just in case you were thinking about doing that, don't do it. Talking about weight, it is very, very noticeable if you're going to be taking it around because it's so heavy. Whether it's in my backpack or in a carry-on, I definitely feel the weight of this in that luggage. Typing, however, is a standout feature on this laptop. There is a raised platform on the bottom of the computer that houses the Intel chip, the GPU, and a cooling system to cool the components, and I thought because of the raise, it would be very uncomfortable to actually type for my wrists, but that is absolutely not the case. There's a large deck here for you to rest your palms on, and typing is absolutely a pleasure. It is one of the better keyboards I've used on any Windows PC device. The keycaps are very smooth with barely any texture. They provide a surprisingly large amount of travel, and they sound great. The trackpad is also one of the best ones I've ever used. Very solidly built, quite large, and it's actually very similar to the M1 MacBook Pro. No matter where I click, I get haptic response and good feedback, which just feels great. It doesn't matter where I'm clicking, if it's here or here, you're gonna feel that response, that vibration. It feels really good. One hard reality you have to face is that there are not enough ports on this laptop. You get 2 Thunderbolt 4 USB-C ports on one end and a headphone jack and charging port on the other. That's it. No card slot reader, no I/O, especially for a device that's made for creatives. It kind of is a pretty big frustration. Generally, for my use, one of the ports would be connected to an external hard drive and the other port would be connected to an adapter, and just like that, I'm all out. So just it just isn't enough ports to be able to justify the price point. Now let's get into the actual studio laptop, and the first thing I want to talk about is the picture quality. We're talking 120 Hz refresh rate on a 14.4 inch screen, which just looks gorgeous. Every time I open it, it looks beautiful. And whether it's gaming, whether it's note-taking, or whether it's just doing videos and watching entertainment and stuff like that, it doesn't matter what you're doing, the display is going to look beautiful. I know a lot of people made a big deal of these rounded corners on the end. They really don't annoy me at all. I barely ever even noticed that they were there. So the video quality and the picture is great, but the speakers are a very big letdown again. Now, don't get me wrong, they're very robust, they do have good sound, they get extremely loud. 100 is madness, okay? I've never used this at 100. However, for a $2,000 laptop, it just doesn't sound good. Literally, it sounds like the volume is coming from like a tin can. It just doesn't sound good. It's not crisp by any means. It's far away from that. It is just loud and obnoxious, and that makes it very muffled. So when I was first using it, you'll realize how bad the sound is right off the bat, and I thought that I'd just get used to it. But that never happened. 30 days later, the only thing that's changed is my tolerance. I can now tolerate it much easier, but I still know I'm listening to garbage sound. It is what it is. Multitasking, however, is awesome, especially with a 14.4 inch screen. You can get a lot of things happening at once, which I was doing, and with the processor and everything, it runs extremely well. The 14.4 inch screen works wonders with Microsoft's new Smart Snap layouts, and along with Whiteboard, that just makes multitasking amazing. Most of the time, I had Whiteboard open on one end, along with social media tab here, and then a YouTube tab or a Gmail tab here, so I was usually working on 3 different windows at once. And talking about the Whiteboard app, the 120 Hz refresh rate makes note-taking extremely nice. You're getting almost 0 latency on your notes, and it's the most truest note-taking app to date. Now, like I said, I was also editing on this device as well, video editing, and generally I found it to be a breeze as well. There were no glitches over the 4 months of using a video editor. I used Wondershare Filmora, no problems at all, and generally exporting a clip that was 6 minutes long in 4K took about 6 minutes. It's also very similar to the M1 MacBook Pro, so it does a very good job of handling heavy loads. It has no problems processing proper amount of processing power. and it also has no problem cooling the system as well. So now we've talked about a lot of good things, good experiences I've had during the past month. Let's continue to push the boundaries and let's talk about gaming. Microsoft does advertise this for the weekend gamer. That was definitely appealing to me, as when I purchased this, I knew there was one game I was going to be playing on this, and that was Dota 2. It's like a MOBA. And I did play it, I tested it, and I had absolutely no problems playing that game. The only problems that did show up at times were the sound. Again, the sound quality was just poor. I have Bose speakers on my main setup, and so this just does not compare, and honestly it just sounds washed out as well. Now I took it to more console level games like Fortnite, and playing games like that, you did see a very significant drop in performance. While Dota 2 was playing at over 100 FPS, Fortnite was playing at 40, and generally consoles are able to play that at around 50 FPS, so you're not necessarily getting console level gaming on this. It is still a whole standard below, but it still is playable. You can still play console games like Fortnite and more taxing games on this device and still have an enjoyable experience as well. Now, that being said, the fans and the cooling system does have quite a load on its hands, and it manages it perfectly. The fans are located under the trackpad area. When your palms are here, you will feel them heat up, but it never got uncomfortable. And when it's under heavy loads, you also feel hot air rushing out from these vents, but again, It's not uncomfortable, and it's also not loud. The fans are very surprisingly extremely quiet. My normal use of about 20 different tabs, whiteboard running as well, got me about 3.5 to 4 hours of use on a single full charge. That's not enough. The performance is great, sure, but for me, someone who's traveling around and doesn't have constant presence of power outlets, 3.5 to 4 hours isn't enough to get through the entire day. Before I get on this, I actually needed to think, do I really need to do this or not? Is this something that I need to get done, or can I just hold it off, push it till I get home, and maybe think of something else? So it wasn't more productive, it was less productive in that sense. Now, a few things you can do obviously is set the brightness to half, and that's generally where I had it set as well. The other thing you can do is go from 120 hertz to 60 hertz. Now, Microsoft did announce that it would have smart adaptive refresh rates, but that hasn't been pushed out to these devices yet. So if you do want to set it to 60 hertz, you would actually have to manually go into settings, dive into wherever the hertz displays are, and change that from there. You just paid $2,000 for this. I'm not running 60 hertz on a $2,000 device, ladies and gentlemen. That's not happening. And the other thing is that if you did decide to go down to 60 hertz, that'll only get you about an hour of additional work. So I mean, it's just poor. Really, for a device this expensive, it is poor. So who is this laptop really for? Obviously, Microsoft is marketing to artists, which makes sense, but the market for artists is very small. So Microsoft has stretched its market into developers, into content creators, who I guess are different from professional content creators. I don't know, but I think it seems like Microsoft is picking a wider audience. With its vast multitasking ability and this huge screen, can business people use it as well? What about gamers? Besides artists, frankly, I think this laptop is for the person who wants an M1 MacBook Pro, but on Windows. I mean, it looks just like the M1 MacBook Pro, but with a few extra quirks and features that make it really stand out. So yeah, it's made for artists, but with its solid spec and performance, it can operate in almost any niche, with two primary drawbacks: a very steep price and a poor battery life. If you can stomach those two, and be honest with yourself, because if battery life and price do matter to you, this whole flexible thing is really gonna wear off really quickly. Basically, what I'm saying is this is an amazing laptop, but if you're not an artist or a designer, and if you can't think of a very real reason for you to have this flexible display, you're better off spending your thousands elsewhere. It's gonna take a little bit of getting used to, but you can do it. There's balance. Oh yes, sir. Oh, we're in the groove of things now, ladies and gentlemen. We are grooving right now.